Let's start with the Greta Thunberg story, which is the big breaking developing story overnight. Very, very robust response from the Israel security forces, aren't they? I mean, first of all, physically, they surrounded the boat and then they boarded it and they nicked a lot of them, virtually at gunpoint, by the look. And verbally, this very dismissive statement describing Greta Thunberg and her friends on the boat as a selfie yacht of celebrities. I mean, the Israelis don't mess about, do they, when they get stuck in?
Well, we get an idea of what's happening to Palestinian children, women and men, who more than 50,000 are now dead, and aid, humanitarian supplies, medical aid are all being used as weapons of war. And there are war crimes now being committed in Israel by the Israeli forces, and the huge sympathy should remain for what happened in the pogrom by Hamas, which was absolutely horrific.
On October the 7th.
But the response by Israel now in Gaza is unforgivable and will be remembered in history for its brutality.
We understand this yacht is British registered, Andrew, so the British government will come under some pressure to intervene. Do you imagine they will?
Well, Starmer has condemned the level of Israeli aggression in Gaza. I'm not sure they will, because I think the Israelis have a point, actually. They are seeking publicity. That's the whole reason Greta Thunberg's there. She's a one-woman walking publicity machine for her cause, not necessarily for herself. Normally it's climate change. So they have got a point there. This is all about publicity, and they actually probably wanted to have the boat intercepted because it makes more publicity.
It's a cause supported by most countries around the world, including the UK, that aid has to get into Palestinians. It's not about Hamas. This is about Palestinians, civilians who are suffering terribly. And it was the footage we see of bottles of water being handed out, I guess, was taken by the Israelis and released by the Israelis to show that they are treating the people on the boat humanely. Yes, the people on the boat say they've been hijacked and
kidnapped.
Kidnapped. This is unlawful, but you can see they're being treated humanely in that way, in a way that many Palestinians aren't in Gaza.
But as I say, the statements from the Israeli government overnight are scornful. They talk about the aid that Thunberg said they were trying to bring into Gaza, and they basically accuse her of tokenism. They say it was a tiny amount of aid,
I'm sure.
and there wasn't that much left of it, because some of it had been consumed by the celebrities, and they say that they'll put it to Gaza through real humanitarian channels.
I mean, well, of course they're going to take that approach, and yes, I mean, that aid wouldn't make much difference, but the whole point of the voyage
with symbolism,
and this has happened with other ships, aid ships that have gone to Gaza in the past before the pogrom. The Israelis basically take them over and stop them because they're illegally occupying Palestinian areas, and they're enforcing a blockade that will be breaching international law.
Andrew, Israel's Minister of Defence, Israel Katz, says he has, this is according to BBC reporting this morning, he has instructed the Israel Defence Forces to show the activists, those on the boat, a video from the 7th of October. In a post on X, he's accused Thunberg and other activists of supporting Hamas, adding it's appropriate for them to see what atrocities Hamas had committed against women, the elderly and children, against whom Israel is fighting to defend itself. The trouble is, Israel now finds itself in a position having to repeat what happened on October the 7th was an atrocity.
Sure, terrible.
Everyone has agreed about that. But Israel is finding it's having to repeat that statement over and over again in order to explain what is happening in Gaza. And what has happened in Gaza since has seemed to many to be disproportionate in response to the horrors of October the 7th,
and of course,
which remain horrors.
They do remain horrors. The most horrific thing to happen to Israeli people since the Holocaust, without a doubt. And they do need to remind people, because I suspect people forget. We saw an actress at the weekend having to withdraw a video where, I think it was Dawn French, where she appeared to be playing down the significance of what happened on October the 7th. So perhaps people do need reminding it now and again. Now, I'm not saying that what Israel is doing is not disproportionate it does seem disproportionate.
What do we make of the Israeli government's repeated claim that they're not using water and food as a weapon of war, that because Hamas embeds themselves with the civilian population, when aid is sent in, unregulated in the way that Israel is now attempting to regulate it, it gets stolen by Hamas. So effectively, they're feeding their enemy.
You have to remember what they say about war. The first casualty of war is the truth. So who's telling the truth here? Are Hamas telling the truth, or is Israel telling the truth? Israel's make it clear all the time that Hamas, if the aid gets anywhere near Hamas, they take it, they keep it, and feed their troops.
And just as a side issue to this, this rumbling debate about the BBC, which still won't describe Hamas as a terrorist organisation. They call them militants, or if they use the word terrorists...
YTV, GMB, describe Hamas?
I'm happy to say that they're terrorists, because of course they are.
No, you are, but I think you'll find broadcasters in the UK have the... I don't know about GB News on the right, but I think you'll find Channel 4 and others have the same position.
Well, the BBC is the national broadcaster, and it's funded by the people, so it's an issue. I just wonder why they're still resisting describing Hamas as a terrorist organisation. Instead, they call them militants, or they say that they are treated as terrorists by governments such as ours.
Well, governments all around the world, actually.
Yeah.
EU, most international bodies treat them say they are terrorists. They are terrorists.
I'll
They're
call
bloodthirsty terrorists and Hamas is pledged to wipe Israel off the face of the planet.
And anti-Semitism.
I'll call them terrorists. But there are people in the Israeli government talking about, basically a river to the sea policy of Israel of forcing out Palestinians. So there's horrors being spoken on both sides here, and all lives matter.
Israel has offered the Palestinians their own territory on numerous occasions. Yasser Arafat, for example, was offered it, and they turned it down because they don't recognise Israel as a state. So they won't do the deal.
Yeah, and also an Israeli right-wing nationalist assassinated a prime minister, Yitzhak Rabin, when he was in favour of a deal.
That's absolutely true.
And the West Bank, which is occupied unlawfully by Israel, is being colonised, and there's atrocities against Palestinians there too, also in East Jerusalem. But no, look, we can stand back here, and I look at that pogrom, and it was absolutely horrific. And if they want to show, if Israel Katz wants to show them that, I think that's fine, absolutely. I suspect they're aware of it, but that is absolutely fine. But let's show Israel Katz what's happening to Palestinians, children, women, clearly non-combatants, who are being blown apart, shot in the head,
well, in fact,
being starved,
we are going to be
diseases.
speaking to a British doctor, Dr. Victoria Rose, who has just returned from Gaza's last functioning hospital, the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis. It's the third time she's been working there since the war began, and she talks specifically about the children with massive injuries who have been caught up. I mean, and no one can deny the children are innocent in this. So we'll talk to her after 7 o'clock this morning. So we'll keep across what's happening with that boat, and we'll speak to the government minister this morning, Chris Bryant, about what the British government might do on that. We have a spending review. The police have been lobbying hard for more money for the police. And this morning we have two stories. First is that two of the most significant police representation bodies say that policing is broken, morale is crushed. And then in the Times this morning, we have details that actually police are getting more money. So clearly, both sides trying to brief the papers to either campaign for more or reassure that more's coming.
And the police officers have fought this campaign in public in a way I'm not used to seeing before. So about a week ago, I think, in the Times, 5 chief constables wrote an open letter saying, if we don't get more money, we will have to make choices about what crimes we investigate or not. Now, some people might say that's happening already. And then Sir Mark Rowley, who's the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, the most senior of them all, he's gone public too, warning much the same. So the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has been fighting a pitched territorial battle.
And
with
we
the
understand from some reports this morning she's been holding out.
Yes, absolutely.
She's the last.
I don't know that she's settled yet.
No, exactly.
I think it's still going on.
She's thought to have now, but if she's won on police,
she might not have won on.
What has she lost? Are they going to? In the old saying, rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
Well, indeed.
What's going to happen with courts?
And what's going to happen with asylum hotels? Because The Sun this morning has a story that Britain's £4.7 billion annual bill to keep migrants in hotels and look after them takes every penny of tax from 582,000 workers. It's a convoluted bit of maths, but it shows
the size of Manchester.
The shocking number revealed today, the equivalent to the population of one of our biggest cities.
Amazing.
Which is why.
And remember, this lot said they were going to close the hotels, and there are now more people in the hotels than when the Tories left office.
Is that the case?
Yes, it is.
The number came down if it's
up
gone
3,000.
But of course, they inherited a huge problem with a system that is broken, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. And of course, that bill is ridiculous. What has to happen is if people, first of all, try and stop people sailing across the channel. If they do sail, then deal with them quickly rather than putting them up in hotels. But there's also another alternative, which in some countries, if you arrive and you make an asylum claim, you're allowed to work while your claim is heard. Of course, we don't allow people to work, so therefore they have no income, so therefore they're put up in these hotels, which sound great fun. I've seen some of them, and they're absolutely terrible hotels. The people who run them are making a fortune.
Can you
out
explain,
of the system.
Kevin, and do you know the answer to the question of why the price for putting each of these individuals up has gone up? Because the latest figures show that there were 32,000 asylum seekers staying in up to 210 hotels. It costs £41,000 a year to house each one, and that is up from 17,000 a year in 2020. Why has the price gone up so much?
That's getting on for the cost of keeping somebody in prison.
Yeah, 42,000.
Yeah, where you've got guards and high walls and everything. I suspect it's because as the number of places required has gone up, people with hotels or companies buying them have taken advantage of it. They call it market forces.
It costs more to house an asylum seeker in one of these hotels than the average UK salary.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, when you compare the figures...
And people, as we speak, are throwing things at the TV because they're so outraged.
Well, that money is not going to the asylum seeker or the refugee.
No.
That is going to some fat cat, either an individual or a company that owns that hotel.
What did you make of Kemi Badenoch's article yesterday in one of the Sunday papers where she was talking about the cost of the benefits, of course, that asylum seekers claim? She's asking for a 10-year moratorium on benefits being paid. At the moment, it's 5 years. What do we make of that?
Well, that was part of their deportation bill they put forward a few weeks ago, which Labour voted down. Well, I don't think people realise that after 5 years, if they, what's it called, indefinite leave to stay, the benefits kick in and they get full benefits. They'll have paid no taxes, presumably, and they get exactly the same benefits that people have been paying into taxes for years and years. So I think she's right.
Well, look, you've got to deal with people before 5 years. That's what you have to do. Either they can stay or they can't. If they can stay, they can work. If they can't, then they need to be returned where they can.
Over in Los Angeles overnight, more rioting. The National Guard turned out again, using rubber bullets, using gas canisters and all the rest of it. I heard one Democratic politician on the radio when I was driving in this morning describing it as President Trump's performative art. So there's absolutely no need for the National Guard to be there, that the situation could easily be controlled by the local forces of law and order. Is it grandstanding?
Yes, and it diverts attention away from his big battle with Elon Musk and everything that's been said about Epstein and contracts and corruption. He takes it all away, and he's acted as a dictator here, because he sent in the National Guard against the wishes of the state governor.
Because it's normally the state governor who calls in the National Guard. In this case, they don't want the National Guard.
I don't think it's ever happened before that a president has sent in the National Guard against the
wishes of the local governor. Administration.
He didn't send the National Guard when his supporters tried to launch a coup back in...
January the 6th.
Yeah, he didn't there. No, deploying the National Guard here has inflamed the situation and is provoking violence.
But it's making him look tough.
It is, and it's all about immigration and deportations.
Immigration was one of his biggest issues when he got in. He said he was going to sort out the borders. These people, the National Guard is going in to get undocumented migrants out, because presumably the local state has failed to do it. Immigration has become huge as an issue. And also, it's over here, back in the UK. Go back to Kemi Badenoch's interview at the weekend. And, of course, the split in reform, which was very quickly repaired.
Well, it's not fully repaired. They've papered over the cracks.
OK, let's just explain to people if they're...
the chair of Reform
resigned
quit.
In the wake of their new MP, Sarah Potchin, who said at Prime Minister's questions, would the Prime Minister consider banning the burqa?
And she'd said she'd asked her constituency Runcorn, they won the by-election by 6 votes, what were the big issues? It didn't come up at all. It was all winter fuel in Pip. Look, she's pouring petrol onto the flames. It's a big issue because there are politicians on the right who are making it a big issue to drive a wedge in communities and turn people against each other.
I think it is a legitimate question.
There is a legitimate debate, but they're making it bigger and bigger and bigger to get people angry and turning on each other.
Kemi Badenoch has now waded into this to say that the burqa should be banned in the workplace, and she says that...
she supports the right of employers to ban it.
To do so.
She's not saying it should be banned.
Right.
No, but employers have the right to
but what she's also said, that if anybody comes into her constituency surgery, she won't see them unless they remove the burqa.
Now,
She's not the first to do that.
Now, I think that's interesting.
When he was a Labour MP years ago.
Jack Straw did not do that. Jack Straw, who was a Home Secretary and a Foreign Secretary, said he would ask the person if they would like to remove their face veil. They cover it. If they didn't, he still saw them. She is saying she will not see people.
You can't communicate properly.
There is a difference between a workplace and a constituency surgery, because as a constituency surgery, I would imagine that every constituent would expect to be seen by their local MP, whatever they're wearing. And if they feel, you know, presumably... those women who wear a burqa, and let's explain, the burqa is the full face veil, where your eyes are covered as well. I would imagine...
Not in all cases, is it? Your eyes?
Yes,
the mesh.
Well, there's a mesh.
The niqab is where you... There is a difference. Here we go. So a hijab is where you have the hair covering, the niqab where your eyes are showing, and the burqa with the full face veil. I would imagine that an MP would feel obliged, unless it's a security issue. Do you think that she's saying it because she does compare it to a balaclava?
She does. She said she wouldn't allow a balaclava either.
That's right.
She's quite clear about that. Quite clear. And there is a security issue, and she said she wants to be able to engage directly and see their face.
It's not just security, though, is it? Because as somebody was saying yesterday in this debate, a face is a face. A human face is a human face. So why is it only women who wear the burqa? Why don't men have to wear
look, I don't like it as a garment because I think the person who wearing it must be oppressed in some way, but it's a very different issue to banning it. That's very different. And if we're doing security and MPs...
France, Belgium, they've banned it.
But the two MPs who've been assassinated, David Amos and Joe Cox, they weren't assassinated by people with face coverings. So let's not... everyone with a face covering is somehow going to be prone to violence. No, there's a lot of people who don't have face coverings who are prone to violence.
So if it's not suggesting... She's not saying give the right to employers to ban it because it's a security issue. Is she saying then because it is a representation of oppression, of extreme conservative Islam? I mean, when the Taliban said back in 2022 that all women should wear the burqa, everyone was outraged. So, but over here...
Kevin says she's chasing reform, but she's made it quite clear in that article that's been her position for years.
There has been...
4 years in her constituency surgery. She won't allow burqas or balaclavas. That was long before reform even existed.
There's probably very few women wear it in her constituency.
Well, I wonder how many women do wear the burqa.
Very few. Look, I've got Muslim friends who don't like it, Muslim women who don't like it too, but it's very different. Why is it being raised, and why talking about this ban? And it's all in sight.
And you also have to wonder what the motive of a woman who wears the burqa is. Is she wearing it because she chooses to wear it and she believes that it's an important garment to put on when she goes out through the front door? Or is she wearing it because she's been told to by a man?
And forced to wear it. I know, look, and then how...
Well, that's not our culture, is it?
No, but, you know, what is your freedom? How do you, decide you really want to do it?
We've had a lot of comments about this, you know, and a lot of people who ride motorbikes have said that when they go and get petrol at the petrol station, they have to take their helmet off. They have to show their faces. That is part of our culture. We are a face recognition.
If somebody went in with their motorcycle crash helmet into a constituency surgery, would the MP not say, take it off?
Yeah, but you're wearing that for a different reason,
You're wearing that to protect your head, whereas if you're a Muslim woman, a very conservative Muslim woman, you're wearing a burqa because of your religious principles.
Which some will be devoted. Now, I'm pretty certain employers have powers already, because there was a case, rings a bell, in Yorkshire of a teacher or a teaching assistant who wouldn't remove the covering in classrooms and couldn't communicate properly with the pupils and lost their job. Now, I don't know what happened. Okay. So I think, look, it's not an absolute right to wear your burqa everywhere. I think sometimes doctors are asked if they wear face coverings not to wear them. Yeah.
Well, we're going to debate that after 7:30 because it is a live political issue. Tory party leader has waded into that. We're going to speak to a Muslim broadcaster after 7:30 about that, as well as Alex Phillips, Fahima Mohammed will be on air.
Question about the reform aspect of this. Yeah. Where do we think this leaves reform in terms of its image? Because it's not a good look, is it, to have your chairman resign on a Friday and come back in 48 hours later? It looks very flaky.
It does look it looks chaotic. And on reform, Sarah Poachian raised this question: would the Prime Minister get rid of the burqa? That is not reform policy. But they are adamant that they defend the right of women to wear the burqa.
But I'm talking specifically about the resignation and the coming back.
Reform had 5 MPs, then Rupert Lowe stomped off, was kicked out, and that was all said to be chaotic, and then they won the Runcorn by-election and 10 councils. So it's sometimes they can just ride over with their controversies.
I think to the political class, a lot of people think, oh, this law looks very chaotic. If you're a reform voter or supporter, I'm not sure that many people care. No. They just think...
Well, a lot of people don't know who's the use of it either. Let's not forget
They lost a couple of % in members, but...
Yeah. Can we, just talking about the police, there's an interesting story in the Times. A couple whose Jaguar car was stolen from outside their home were forced to, now the Times reports it as steal it back because police were too stretched to investigate. This couple found out that their car had been nicked from outside their house in West London, but the car had an immobiliser fitted and had an AirTag located. Basically, they could track where their car was. So they ring up the police. They say, will you rescue our car? Police say, I'm terribly sorry, we're too busy, we can't investigate for you. So they go round to where their car is. And, of course, you know, if you've got a spare key, they just jump in their car and drive back to their house with their car. I mean, it's great if you've got an AirTag in your car and you know exactly where it is. And lots of, you know, up-to-date cars do have tracking devices. But it's pretty extraordinary, isn't it? Because the risks that you take if you go and take your car back, you don't know who's nicked it.
Could be a very ugly gang.
Absolutely.
To take part
They could be in the middle of their work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why this spending review about the policing is so important, because police might say, oh, it's not important, car theft. Yes, it is.
The police...
matters enormously
my daughter has had 2 cars stolen from our driveway at home in the space of 3 months. The original car and the replacement. And within an hour of reporting it to the police, she had a call back simply saying that they weren't going to investigate.
They won't.
They just gave her a crime number for the insurance.
Has she now put an AirTag in the glove compartment?
I won't say where she's put it.
No, you want to hide it, absolutely.
I find that from a generation where car theft was always seen as an important crime and one that had to be brilliant, it's extraordinary that you now, within 40 minutes, you get a call from police.
Hats off to the people who went and got their car back. Brilliant, but they shouldn't have to do that.
And it happens with burglary as well. People say, sorry, we're not coming, here's your crime number, clear off.
The woman who was part of the couple said she sympathised with the police because they're clearly overwhelmed.